some ideas with us specifically to organizing and executing new pint-sized hero drives. What are some of your tips that you think are the best?
I'll go ahead and start. I've had a little bit of success. It's a unique situation where the elementary was close to the high school. I had a great relationship with the HOSA program that runs my high school blood drives. We used the HOSA kids, the leadership for the blood drives, who then took a field trip and actually did the presentation in each individual classroom. That blood drive had been doing low 20s, and that particular blood drive that we did, it did mid 40s. So more than double what they historically had done. Killed two birds with one stone. We had a blood drive, an increased blood drive, pint-sized hero program, but the HOSA kids also got extra additional hours involved in the blood drive that they have to do outside of the classroom anyway. I don't know if you know this, but most of those kids have to have outside volunteer hours, HOSA students, in the healthcare related field, and those presentations, the time they spent practicing and planning those presentations all counted towards those hours.
That's awesome.
So it just strengthened my relationship with that group. Another one that we were successful with, that I was successful with, was working with the student council. Those are fourth and fifth grade students. I had a good relationship with the the teacher who was running the student council. The student council sponsored the blood drive, and then those fourth and fifth grade students went to the other classrooms and did presentations. And we saw a larger increase in that blood drive, not like when the teenagers came down. I think students elementary are in awe of the high school students, and I think that helped tremendously.
I like what you said, especially on that first one, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, and you guys may already know this, but finding a win situation for them is crucial. And when you found a way to connect with that existing group and something that they had need of, which was these practice or community service hours, whatever. One of the groups that I had success with was similar to that in the fact that they already had a service learning club, and again, that's a good starting point for you guys if you're looking at a school that you haven't worked with before. Is do they have a service learning club? Because sometimes they're either looking for a project or they've grown stale on doing the same 3 projects every year, whatever the case might be. But if you find somebody that's already looking, so to speak, for a project, then also I think the coordinator, because they're coordinating that particular group, they're already kind of in the mindset of what we want them to be, which is they like to do community service. They want to do community service. Who else has an idea to share about organizing and executing?
If I could real quick, I have a question. You say service learning club. Are you talking about a club that's actually called Service Learning Club or something like Key Club?
No, something like Key Club,
Okay.
Junior Beta. Again, different areas have different varieties of those, but even if, for example, you have these clubs, and I'm drawing a blank right now on what the name of them is, but you have clubs that are interested in recycling or taking care of nature or different kinds of things like that. There's ways to connect the blood program in with that too, potentially. Again, that might not be the group that you want because there might be another group over there, but if that's the only group they have, then that might be a nice inroads to get things started with them. Okay, who else has an idea to share with the group about planning and executing these drives?
One of my problems is I have a school that is doing a pint-sized hero blood drive, but their 3DA from way many years ago is super low, so I had to go them at 18. So I'm not going to a school of 400 kids promoted at every grade level, because even at 10%, that's just too many people. That's going to be overrun. So looking at what grade level they would want, they think I would fit into to promote the blood drive.
Sure, and that's a tough situation too because we are so strapped to our averages. And that's something that I would encourage you to have a discussion with your manager about out front, because you guys know the term risk is a real big hot subject item right now, okay? And I'm not a manager, so I can say this, but to me, if you expect greater results, you have to take some risk, right? So you go into a school, and I had that similar situation. One of these that you saw on the board here, and I'm glad you brought that up because I want to give this a little bit of background. When I first moved to my territory, I had worked with the Red Cross previously, so I knew kind of the nuts and bolts of the job, but I didn't know that area. And I heard a lot of discussion about these pint-sized hero drives and how they were working, and we needed to go blaze a trail into every school and all this kind of stuff. And I was very skeptical of that. First of all, because I'd never done it before. It wasn't a part of my previous experience with the Red Cross. But I also had these files that showed the terrible results from the past. And I was like, do I really want to put a blood drive on at this school? They collected 8 the last time we were there. You know, one of the ones that you saw on the screen was one of those schools that had collected so poorly in the past. So you're right, you have to go into it and kind of gauge that up front and set things up in the beginning, and there is going to be some risk involved in that, and that's something that you have to discuss kind of with your manager up front. Somebody else got an idea about planning, executing that you want to
I
share?
was gonna just ask a question. Do you typically present to the whole school or go to individual classrooms? Like you said that the HOSA groups goes to individual rooms, correct?
That was specific for that,
That school,
for
okay.
that school, that operation at that time.
Does it just depend?
I go in asking for a group assembly. That's
Okay.
what I go in asking for. And that's what I try to sell, is a group assembly. Now, there are some schools, again, that depend on your age range, that they'll want to bring their K through 2 in, and then they'll want to bring their 3 through 5 in separately, so maybe I do 2 different presentations. But I'll be honest with you, again, to me, that's a part of selling the whole program, is I can weigh the options of spending an entire day at that school or spending an hour at that school. I want to spend an hour at that school and get the results that I need to get. So that's what I'm presenting up front. And if they tell me no, then my next thing is, do you have another assembly that's coming in that I could tag team with? Because again, I want to invest an hour instead of investing 8 hours to get the same result, if at all possible. And again, his example is a little bit different, because that's cool that you got teenagers. Yeah, all those kids are going to say, hey, these are cool teenagers. You know, not some old red-haired guy coming in here to talk, right? And they're going to respond to that. And if you have a group that, you know, that you've properly trained to say, this is what we need to make sure you're covering, then that's a good situation too. Somebody else have something to add here?
I don't know if I have anything to add, but
You look like you did, so
well,
I was looking at you.
I try to involve as many people as I can, if I can, and I was just thinking of a structure that would include the principal and then one representative from each one of the grades, the K1, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up to fifth, which would be 6, with one of them being the BDC, but kind of a committee, somebody from every age group, and then each one of those age group teachers involved, maybe asking them to involve 3 parents as a committee just for their group. And then that's, you got 25 people right there just involved in it.
If you can sell that, then I want you to come to my territory.
Well,
And sell all that. That sounds, no, but it sounds like a
No.
good premise.
Right.
Because you're right, the more people you can get involved in it, the more, I like to use the term advocates. You know, if you don't have someone advocating blood donation in that school, then you can hang it up. It's not gonna work, you know?
Yeah, now how do you ensure that each one of the grade school teachers are actually gonna do the educational element of it? I mean, does that take the principal to I mean, absolutely.
Well, we'll get into that here in a second, a little bit, and let me make sure that I answer your question as we're going through here. If I don't, then we'll come back and address that
Okay.
specifically. You have a question or comment?
Well, talking about that, what I ran into, and we might need to wait on this, but with the lesson plans and things that we have was, that's not in our curriculum. We don't have time to put it in there.
Right.
So do you use something else instead of trying to get those teachers on board for that?
I don't focus a whole lot on that
You don't.
element. I don't focus a whole lot on the teaching curriculum element of it. It's good if you can, but that's not been a part of my experience. And we'll, again, hopefully we'll answer that question here in a second.
Are you going to do an actual like teaching presentation like you do for the kids today?
I'm not, but we're gonna talk about all the elements that I include. So let's move forward, since you guys are getting into part of this. Organizing and executing. Recruitment is the key. You guys probably got that memo, right? That recruitment was the key. That's the difference maker right there. Whatever way and whatever flavor it looks like. I use a lot of analogies, and sometimes I don't know if my analogies make sense or not, other than in a group of DRD reps, but maybe they make sense to you guys. To me, there's Baskin Robbins is our business. There's 31 different flavors of how you do a blood drive and how you do it successfully. So you have to find the way that works for you, but it all has to come back to this. If there's not some active recruitment going on, then we all know that it's not going to work. It can't just be Facebook, and it can't just be, you know, email groups of 5,000 people and all that kind of stuff. There has to be recruitment going on. Plan a school-wide assembly, we kind of talked about that. I like to call it kickoff week. If I can, I sell the principal on the importance of the program. Tag team with another assembly if necessary. Send the parent letter home with the students. I like to do this 4 to 5 weeks in advance of the blood drive. I like to meet with the student organization. Again, I'm painting you guys this beautiful rosy picture, right, of what it could be like, all right? It's not like this in every one of my programs. Excuse me, but if you can get a student-led organization, again, you've got two components there that are kind of working in your favor. One is you got more than one person working on the program. You've got students that are involved. And you've also got the teacher slash BDC who hopefully, because he or she is involved with that type of organization, they like to do these kind of things. They want to do these kind of things. How many of you had BDCs that were assigned? The job of BDC was assigned to them, right?
My favorite.
Not a good scenario,
Can't be
right?
good or bad.
So just to kind of take a sidestep here, you know, if we've done some research and we found out that this school maybe has 2 different organizations, or maybe we've done research as best we can and we found out nothing about this school's organizations, then when we're talking to the principal and selling the program, then one of the questions that I like to ask of he or she, the principal, is, do you have an organization already in existence in the school that does this type of project? Because again, we're kind of trying to marry right into the message to the principal is this is easy. Well, you can just connect this with a group. We're not saying to the principal, we're reinventing the wheel here, right? Because you're going to get a lot of, whoa, we don't want to do that. We're too busy. Our test scores are down. You guys know you're going to hear all the excuses. So if you can find a student organization, that's great. I like to wrap all 3 of these meetings up, or all 3 of these events, if you will, in the same day, all right? So this is what I call kickoff weeks, to say, okay, we're going to plan in advance that I'm going to come in and do a student assembly with the entire school. We're going to meet with your student organization while I'm there. I love to do that beforehand if possible. That's awesome if I can do it before. Let's say the school gets out at 3 o'clock. You know, if they plan the assembly for 2:15 or something like that, then I ask to come in at 1:45, something like that, to speak to the student group themselves, the Junior Beta Club, let's say, because that's one that I've worked with. And then when I meet with the Junior Beta Club, then I'm giving them kind of the exclusive. Hey, this is an awesome project that you guys are involved with. I'm talking to you before I even talk to the rest of the students, because you guys are the ones that are going to make this happen. I really sell them on the importance of what their roles are and how they can help make things successful and how they can help save lives, and explaining to them that Mrs. Brown, the coordinator, needs their help because she's very busy and she does a lot of things. But if she has all of you 20 students helping and each doing your part, then you guys can make it a success. And I'm trying to invest in them the idea of the buy-in, getting the students to buy into that. Turning the students into donor recruiters, again, that's an important part of this. Training or motivating your student leaders, getting them to take ownership. That's what I was talking about, just jumping ahead there. Testimonials, if you can find a testimonial specific to that school or even just a generic one. You know, I got a phone call 3 or 4 days ago, 3 or 4 business days ago, from a lady who has a 4-year-old who's going through chemotherapy, who's wanting to do a blood drive. Well, I've not even met this lady yet, but if I had an elementary school presentation tomorrow, then I can use that. because I can say, let me give you an example of who uses blood products. I just talked to a mom with a 4-year-old. Now, if that doesn't get attention in an elementary school, then I'm probably not gonna have a successful blood drive there, right? So I can use a generic kind of testimonial too, if that's what I have to do. Character ed, that's kind of connected with what I was saying before with service learning. Some of these schools have character education type programs or other programs to highlight service learning. One day I was walked into a gym. I was getting ready to do a presentation that was an assembly presentation. It was all the students. You know, some schools, every kid comes into the gym in the morning before they leave for their classroom. That's a perfect time to do an assembly. If they won't let you do one any other time, that's a perfect time to do it. And I walked into the room and I happened to look across the gym, and there on the wall is this big, huge sign that said something like service, okay? So their school had a word of the month, if you will. You know, service, trust, whatever those words were. So I look across the gym and I'm like, hey, I want to know what that is, because that's what I'm getting ready to connect to my presentation. So I asked, and they said, yeah, we've got these words that we focus on each month to try to help our students become better citizens, better people. If you deal with the schools a lot, you know that that's a part of the curriculum that they have to teach, because parents are teaching that at home too much, right? So they have to use those kinds of things. Discipline, honesty, they have to incorporate that. And if you walk in and it says service or helping others or whatever the case might be, or if you find out that they give shiny red stickers every week to every kid who gets noticed helping someone else, guess what? There's your connection right there. Say, hey, I know you guys give out awards for helping each other every week. This is a great way to help people. You have a question or a comment? Okay, just stretching.
Yeah, I am.
No problem. Incentives. How many of you like incentives? Yes, everybody
Girl
does.
Scout cookies.
Yes, everybody likes incentives. Students like incentives. Students are used to getting incentives. They are. So that's a part of what we have to do. We have to find incentives. Identify target groups for recruitment. Here's something I like to do that I think maybe drills down at a little bit different level. Again, if you're working with a student group, hopefully you are, a student sponsor group. Ask your student group to ensure that all teachers, administrators, office staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, every single person connected to this building is a potential blood donor. Let's make sure that they all have one of you cute little 3rd or 4th graders walk up to them and ask them, would you please help somebody else by giving blood? Set up a reminder system. The BDC can utilize students to do reminder calls. Have y'all done that before? Okay, let me tell you a really cool story real quick. I went to see my BDC at an elementary school one day. This is when they were still through 5th grade. Okay, it's before the intermediate was pulled out. And I walked into the room and she was on her planning period, so she was out of the room. I walk into the room and there's an older gentleman there. And I say, I'm looking for Mrs. Brown. I'm here with the Red Cross. And he goes, oh, are you the guy that like heads up the blood drive or coordinates the blood drive or whatever? And I said, yeah. So he starts telling me with all this enthusiasm, he's telling me the story about how he saw 2 young ladies, 2 students, over in the corner. They were making their calls for the blood drive, and he was so impressed at how professional these young ladies were. These 4th and 5th grade students. He was overwhelmed at how impressed they were, how professional they were, that they were calling and reminding. Again, these are cute little Girl Scouts, right? Making calls for us. Are you much more likely to show up for your appointment? I think so, if you got some kid calling and reminding you. So that's one thing you do. I like to recommend that donors be contacted and given reminders at 1 to 2 weeks and 1 day. 3 to 4 contacts minimum for every donor. I like to say when they send their response form back to you, contact them. Thank you for sending this in. Thank you for committing to donate blood. We've got you down for X time. 1 to 2 weeks out. Again, it depends on your time frame. If they sent their letter in 5 weeks ago, then maybe a week is better than 2 weeks, whatever. And then a 1 day reminder. Thought I missed something. Okay. All right, when it comes to the presentation, that was back to your question. Again, these are just some elements that I try to use. I try to brag on their previous results if possible, if they've done well the year before, just reinforcing what they've done. I want to thank the principal, the BDC, the sponsor group in front of the entire school if possible. Some of the schools think it's really cool to have the junior beta club members come down, and sit down in the front. Hey, I'm all about that. Bring them down. Let them sit down in front. Let them sit out here in the middle of the gym floor while I'm talking, whatever. Draw attention to them and make them feel appreciated. Make a connection with the character building programs or other programs the school's involved with. I already hit on that. Explain why people should give blood. Use a testimonial. We talked about that a minute ago. Give specific instructions about the parent letter. Tell students exactly what they need to do. This is, I think, back to your question earlier about the teachers and doing the education and all that kind of thing. If you can get them to do that, that's awesome, but I don't necessarily think that that's a deal breaker. Because in my presentation, I'm telling the students exactly what I want them to do. And again, I'll give you an illustration. This is a few years ago. There was actually a different account manager covering the school where my kids went to school. And I believe my daughter was in 2nd grade or maybe 3rd grade. And we were sitting down to eat dinner that night, and Jade says, "Hey Mom, will you come to school and give blood?" Of course, my ears kind of perk up. All of a sudden I'm like, whoa. I said, "Jade, why did you do that?" And here's her answer. Guess what her answer was of why she did that? Anybody want to guess?
Because she'd get a prize if she has to make them do it.
Anybody else want to guess? To me, this was golden. Anybody else? Because that lady told me to. That lady that stood up in front and did the presentation told her to go home and ask her mom or dad. I'm like, whoa, that's gold right there. So when I go in to do my presentation, I try to at least 2 to 3 times, you got to repeat something if you want people to get it, right? 2 to 3 times I try to say, now kids, all we're asking you to do is take this letter home. It won't take you 37 seconds to do it, right? Take this letter home, talk to mom or dad, tell them why giving blood is important, make sure they fill that out. Now make sure they only fill it out if they're serious about coming to give blood. This is not a letter that every parent needs to sign, right? We don't want a bunch of fake responses coming in. So by telling them exactly what I want them to do during the presentation, that's the beginning point. Now, it's not all that's involved. We want the teachers reinforcing that over the coming weeks. But that's kind of the starting point is you're explaining to the students, you can make a difference. You're not old enough to give blood yet, but you can make a difference. Here's what I need you to do. You take this home, talk to mom or dad, get them to sign it if they're interested, and return the letter. Yes?
So you pass out the parent letter during the, at the beginning of the assembly, or do they have it in their hands at the assembly? Or?
They already have it. The students don't have it directly. What I prefer is that, it's going home in their backpacks that day. That's perfect if you can get that to happen. It doesn't always work out that way. But I love to say, you're going to get this letter coming home with you today, and then I have the office distributing the letters out to all the teachers. Again, if you have a junior beta or some other club, that's just another assignment that those kids can do too. And you have all that, of course, pre-orchestrated with your coordinator. Is to say, hey, here's my pile of letters. Get your kids to count these out and know that Mrs. Jones gets 19 and Mr. Smith gets 18 or whatever. And then have the kids take the letters out to the classes. Just another thing for them to do as well. But I love to, that's why I called it kickoff week earlier. If it all works the way I want it to, I'm doing my assembly presentation, I'm meeting with the sponsor group, and I'm getting the letters sent home that day because I'm saying to the kids, you're going to get this letter that looks like this, go home and talk to mom or dad and get this sent back quickly because we're trying to plan this blood drive.
How far in advance were you doing your presentation?
I like to do 4 to 5 weeks generally.
And Johnny, down here in the South, they usually have weekly folders. And once a week, you find out what day their weekly folders go home, and that's the day that you would want to make sure the letter gets in there and tag team it with
absolutely.
the day of your assembly.
I hate Friday folders, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's usually
I
Monday.
hate Friday folders because Friday means you got Saturday and Sunday to forget everything in the folder, right? We
Typically
can't
Monday
control
through
that. But some of my schools, yeah, they'll tell me that. They'll go, oh, we got Friday folders on. Oh, man, I want to come on a Tuesday or Wednesday because I want to give as much of that remaining week as possible for us to start to get that response. You know, you're not going to get all of it, obviously, but if you start to get 10, 15, 20 in those first few days, then hey, you're starting off on the right foot.
But even if you can't do it on the day of the folders going home, just say it's gonna be in your Monday folder or whatever, or your Tuesday folder, and if you're doing it whatever day.
Yeah, absolutely. If
Just
you
find
have,
out what day they're.
yeah, if you have to come on Thursday and they have Friday folder, then you're saying, hey, look for this tomorrow. Be sure and pull this out. You know, again, I think kids are used to being given instructions, right? They're in school. So I try to take that role on to say, these are your instructions. This is what I'm asking you to do.
But the parents are trained to look for those folders and to go through that folder, each paper, and actually read it. So even if the kid forgets, they're gonna be aware of it. If it goes home like any other day of the week besides the folder, then it gets lost in the backpack.
Right.
So.
Motivate the students to help. These are some of the phrases that I like to use. Again, you can use your own phrases that are comfortable for you, but I think it's important to let them know that they're making an impact. You can make a difference. It feels good to help someone else. The blood program is all about helping someone else. Because again, and I'm going to jump back to what you just said, the parents will see it, yes, but preferably the kid is pulling it out, right? I mean, that's
Right.
the best case scenario.
No,
is
exactly.
the child's pulling it out and saying, hey, mom, dad, just like my own daughter did, hey, mom, will you come to school and give blood? She's probably motivated by the prizes because my child would eat pizza every meal of the day, every day of the week, right? So there was probably some kind of pizza party or something involved. But when I asked her point blank, why did you do that? The answer was because that lady told me to. Wow. If even a third of those kids would do what we ask them to by going home and really, engaging a family member, that would be awesome.
Unfortunately, you're dealing with elementary school people, so the kindergartners and first grade, 30 minutes after you've left, they've totally forgotten about it. But it's usually like the third, fourth, and fifth graders that kind of retained it that are going home. So those kindergartner parents, that's why they're looking in the folder, because half the stuff that they're supposed to be told, their child's not telling them.
All right, let's move on. Let the students know they're not old enough to donate, but they are old enough to make a difference. Again, you're trying to get them individually as much as possible to buy into the whole concept of this project. This project is about helping somebody else, and that's what we're trying to get them to. Use an illustration about helping others or using their influence for something good. Show off the incentive item. Was anybody around when we had the jellyfish yo-yo?
I have some.
That was a
I've
big
never
deal.
seen kids get so excited about
that was the
anything in my
best.
life.
That
When I
was a big
saw the
deal.
jellyfish yo-yo, I thought, oh my gosh, this is
Me
a piece
too.
of junk. And then you walk into a presentation and you do a couple of yo-yo moves with that thing where it goes around. Oh my gosh, you're right. They're eating peanuts out of your hands, right? It's as if you showed up with Girl Scout cookies or something. So show that off. Keep it brief. 8 to 10 minutes is about the attention span. Okay?
How do you
That
think they're gonna
much.
feel about the medal? Think they're gonna like the medal?
I'm not real thrilled about the medal
Yeah,
myself.
wasn't
But I was
too
wrong
thrilled
about
when
the
I saw it was
jellyfish
a medal.
yo-yo.
I'm like going, are they gonna want a medal?
But we'll hit on that here in a second
What
too.
were your thoughts on the slap watch?
Wasn't real thrilled about slap watch either.
Really? Oh, most of my kids ate that up.
My high schoolers like that.
My kids
Yeah,
stared at
love-
me as if I had offered them nothing when I showed the slap
Really?
watch. Yeah. I really, actually, the response I got was actually less than what I thought it would be. Because I thought there'd be some kids that when I slapped it on my arm, they go, oh, cool, but
Really?
anyway. But I'm not a 7-year-old, so I never know what's gonna motivate a 7-year-old, really. Okay, get the students involved. Again, that's a real key. So I heard one of you guys talking about during your breakout session earlier, about a teacher and how they feel overwhelmed and they got a lot going on and stuff like that. If you can avoid that situation, obviously you're better off in the long haul. Because if this is a project that's put onto the desk of someone that maybe didn't really want it, And I have one school that used to, you know, their new teachers coming in, every new teacher had to do some type of project through the year. And so the principal would say, I'll find you a coordinator. And she went to our staff meeting and she basically said, okay, I know all you new teachers have to have a project. Here's a Red Cross blood drive. Does anybody want to do this? Well, they're about as excited about it as this. So you get what you pay for, kind of thing, right? So we want to get the students involved as much as possible. And we can make this an educational experience. Here's some ideas about getting the kids involved. Recruiting parents and returning their commitment cards. That's kind of a given. Set up a contest, a prize for the class with the most donors. Get the school club or a local pizza vendor to donate a prize. Now, I'm going to give you the antithesis of what you just said. When I do free pizza party for the classroom that gets the most donors, do you know who wins it most of the time? Kindergarten and first grade. I've been shocked by that. In fact,
No, they're the
you'll
highest
remember-
participating.
You'll
class.
remember this story. I ran across an old newspaper article. I was looking in one of our desks at our office. I ran across an old newspaper article from, I can't remember how many years back. This young lady was a kindergartner in Graves County, and the newspaper actually did a story on her because, actually, let me backtrack. She was in 3rd grade at the time the story ran, I believe. But the reason they did a story on her was because she was recruiting 5 blood donors every time we had a blood drive. That particular school system had 2 blood drives a year, and she had been doing that ever since she was in kindergarten. Like, wow, that's pretty cool, huh? And I actually ran across a copy of that recently. So whatever works, I mean, if it's kindergarten, if it's 5th grade, you know, we're not as concerned about that. But there are ways to add on and find additional incentives and additional ways that you can get the kids excited.
Who pays for that pizza party?
Club or local pizza vendor.
Okay.
That's the key, is getting somebody to sponsor that. I have a local pizza
You
vendor
don't
that
use your P
donates.
card?
I'm sorry?
You don't use your P card?
I would not recommend that.
Okay.
Unless Dean's out of the room, then, you know, anything goes. But I have a local pizza vendor in McCracken County that donates pizza and drinks for all of my schools for a free party for the classroom that gets the most. It's good advertising for them. You know, what does it cost them? 15, 20 bucks, whatever, you know, to donate 4 pizzas and a couple of drinks. But again, that kind of keeps the excitement level going, and you'll see another thing that I do to kind of tie in with that here in a second. Distributing the materials. Again, if you have a sponsor club, that's just something else that those kids can do, is to hand out the letters the day before the presentation or the morning of or whatever. Help call to schedule appointments. We talked about that earlier. Create posters, bulletin boards, one-call announcements, all kinds of things, right, that these kids can do. One of the analogies that I've liked to use over the years is the baking of a cake, all right? I'm a horrible baker. In fact, I'm not a baker at all. So if you came to me and you said, hey, I want a birthday cake, then don't bet on it being very good or very nice looking, right? But if you came to me and said, I need a birthday cake and I have to bake your cake, I'm going to start with the recipe. Okay, that's the safest starting point, because a recipe is going to tell me if I put these ingredients in and I do them in these time frames, then I'm going to end up with a cake. Okay, I think the blood programs are similar to that, especially the Pint Size Hero. What you're giving to your coordinators is the recipe. You're giving them the basic instructions or the basic ingredients and the basic time frame. And again, when you're selling the program, that's part of what you can do with the principal. You can say, hey, what we typically do is, I typically come in and do a presentation with all the students present. That's what we've seen to work well. That's what most of the schools that I work with do. So you're already kind of insinuating that they're going to be okay with it, right? That's part of the sales approach. What we typically do is we send letters home to all the parents and so on and so on. So what I'm getting at with my illustration about the cake is, give them the basic instructions, the basic recipe, but then let the kids add all the icing and the sprinkles onto it that they want, right? They can come up with 100 creative ideas that you and I have never thought of, okay? We've had bulletin board contests, we've had kids make posters, we've had kids stand out at the parent pickup line in the afternoon saying, we need 10 more appointments to fill our schedule, would you donate blood? All kinds of crazy stuff. They can do rap songs at lunchtime or over the intercom, or they can make up a one-call message and send that out. Again, parents are used to kind of the mundane kind of stuff. Maybe they're more willing to listen if they hear, hey, this is Kelsey Smith, I'm a third grader at XYZ Elementary, and I'm calling and asking you to give blood. You know, get them interested and involved and use their creativity as a benefit. Make the blood drive fun. That's a creative thing for them. You can develop a theme for decorations, have students greet donors as they enter, send thank you notes. I've got some schools that do that. They printed out a little note that was kind of a pre-printed deal, and then at the blood drive they have the kids say, thank you Mr. Smith for coming in, or whatever. Those kind of things are awesome because, again, you're getting the kids involved. You're adding more meat to the program from the teacher's perspective or the sponsor's perspective to say, look at all these great activities that we had the kids involved with. This is a really good project for us. Have students or parents bake goodies for the canteen if you want to do that. Let the kids add all their ideas. All right, here's 2 ideas that work. Every kid that brings in a response form gets to put their name on a little heart, and they put that on their teacher's door. So that as you're walking down the hall, Mrs. Smith's got 6 hearts on her door already, and Mr. Jones over here's got 3, and so on and so on. It gives them a visual. It gives them a way of being recognized. They want to be recognized for doing something good. So there's one idea. Here's another idea. Make a progress graph that shows which teacher has the most responses so far. Okay? Especially if you've got that free pizza lined up, that pizza party lined up, then 2 weeks out from the blood drive, let's just say, you can say, okay, we've got a graph here in the cafeteria, or even better, we're announcing every day. Mr. Black's classroom so far is in the lead. They have 5 responses for the blood drive. Mrs. Smith's in a close second at 4. Gives the kids a little motivation again, because they're like, okay, my class is not doing anything. We got to kind of get our act together. Now here's the other thing that you do. And again, a lot of this is tied to having a sponsor group, okay? So I understand if you don't have a sponsor group, you may be limited in being able to do some of these things. Depends on the enthusiasm of your BDC. But if you have a sponsor group and you say to them, hey, start tracking which classroom is represented by all these results, then you can graph out, and the classrooms that you have 0 responses from, send somebody to reinforce, right? Maybe Mrs. Johnson was out with a sick child that whole week that we did the kickoff and started talking about the blood drive. And she's really overwhelmed and she's behind and she's kind of lost track of the fact that the blood drive's even been announced. If you have 0 responses from her class, let's send somebody to reinforce that and try to spark some response from her particular group. All right, the day of the blood drive. These are kind of, again, basic standard stuff that you guys are probably used to. But there's at least one thing in here that maybe you hadn't thought of. Make sure that all facility arrangements have been made in advance, set up time arranged, the PE or library classes adjusted, etc. I have learned that the PE teacher is one of the most important persons to this whole thing. Because if we catch them off guard and tick them off, then we've created a bad situation, right? We've all had that happen, right? Principal says, yeah, October 13th, that's a great day for the blood drive, but then they forgot to tell the PE teacher, you got to have something else going on. So that's something that you might say to your BDC, hey, have you talked with, have you followed up with, have you made sure the PE teacher is aware that we're asking them to be flexible that day? Work with the BDC to train and schedule student leaders to work registration and canteen with adult supervision. Have a lot of schools where they have 3rd, 4th, 5th graders that are in there running the blood drive, so to speak, as long as they have adult supervision. Again, I think that adds to the overall atmosphere because the grandparents and parents love to come in and see the kids helping. They love to see the service knowledge that they're getting. They love to be greeted at the front door by those kids. They're just as cute as those Girl Scouts, right? Except they're trying to get some blood out of you instead of selling you some cookies. Arrange for childcare. Huge parentheses here. I should have bolded and italicized and all that kind of stuff. As needed, not advertised. And when I was looking through this presentation again, I thought, okay, at my schools, I need to re-emphasize this. This is something that I've kind of lacked off on emphasizing a little bit. Because almost every one of these pint-sized hero drives I go to, I see somebody with a 2 or 3 year old kid in tow. And I don't know how you guys do this, but some of our charge nurses allow them to just kind of keep on going through the belt line, and others are more like, whoa. And I get really nervous when I see a 2 or 3 year old kid going with mom or dad through the belt line. So if you have a game plan up front, and the point of emphasis that I'm trying to make for myself is I need to remind my BDCs, hey, when that person comes in, have a game plan and go ahead and say, hey, Sarah can come over here and sit with these kids in full view of you as you're donating blood, but we've got activities right over here for the kids. Again, you're kind of assuming that they're sending their kid over there. You're not even giving them the option. You're saying this is what we've got going on for your child over here so that you can have a safe donation experience and your child's being taken care of. Especially when school first lets out, right? If school lets out at 2:55, you got the flood. You got all these kids that are like, hey, my mom's in here donating blood somewhere. Have a plan for them, because if you can kind of corral those kids, have them in a safe environment, have supervision for them, but you're reducing the stress of the donor, and then you're also just making it a better situation.
Aren't you immediately though causing a little liability there? I'm just saying.
We've always done color sheets for at Worth County Primary. That's what we've always done, because there's always a lot of mamas with little ones, and we've always just had little color inputs and gave them cookies and shoes, and never had a problem.
I mean, the point I'm making is, again, you're not advertising it, but you have a plan for if they show up, because some mom's gonna show up with a 2-year-old.
So it's unofficial.
So, exactly.
Maybe have a projector going with a Disney movie or the Wiggles.
Sure, then all the parents wanna stay and watch Disney too, right?
Hey, who doesn't?
Exactly.
Everybody loves
Tell how old
Wiggles.
the kids are.
All right, here's one that maybe you haven't thought of. Maybe you have, but if you haven't thought of this, this is, to me, is one of the best things that I've done. Day of the blood drive reminders. Have your BDC or an adult volunteer to call in advance all donors 30 to 45 minutes prior to their donation. This offers opportunity to remind them as well as to find out if they have a conflict. Finding out about no-shows or conflicts in advance allows the BDC to adjust the schedule. Alternate donors can be called in, or walk-ins can be offered the slot that is now open. To me, this is one of the biggest keys that I've come across, because we all have no-shows, and our no-show rate every day is worse than what we want it to be. So if we contact these donors that one last time, then A, we're finding out if they have forgotten, which they often do, because we all get up some days and we have a dumpster fire and everything that happened before that is lost, right? We find out if they have had a conflict come up and they say, well, I can't make it at 2 o'clock. Well, I've got a 5:30 appointment time. Would that work for you? We're trying to salvage that donation. Because if we haven't touched base with them that day, they're going to just blow it off, right? A meeting came up, they have in their minds a legitimate reason that they can't come to donate blood. But if we have the BDC or an adult volunteer calling to try to secure that, then maybe we save some of those. And in the other scenario, even if we can't save that 2 o'clock, now we know we have an opening. Is there a custodian we can slide in there early? Is there somebody's husband that works just down the street that we can call in? We know 30 to 45 minutes before 2 o'clock that we have a no-show, not at 2 o'clock or 2:10 when it's too late to refill that spot. So that's something that's hugely helpful. Maybe more difficult to implement if you have an existing blood program at a school, because they already kind of have their expectation of how it's going to be done. But if you have somebody that's eager to do better, to improve their blood drive, or especially if you have a first-time coordinator, something else that I've learned about teachers over the years is they love to have a checklist, right? That's their world. They are used to being organized. Hopefully, they're used to being organized. So give them a checklist. Kind of let them know these are the things that we need you to check off between you and your students. They can line all that up. This is a real key. Opportunities for your territory. Okay, here's an individual exercise that we're going to take just a few minutes for. Take the next 5 minutes, maybe 3, if you work quickly. List all the elementary schools in your territory that do not host a blood drive currently. all elementary schools that do not currently host a pint-sized hero drive.
Done.
All right, y'all already done that.
All of them.